and welcome to the third installment of the Emotionally Baked podcast channel, the Emotionally Bloomed podcast. This is the inaugural first episode of Emotionally Blooming, and this is where we take all the emotions that we've talked about, that we have experienced through reading, that we've experienced through channeling it through baking, and we kind of dive a little deeper and we talk about how we've come through on the other side of those emotions. Sometimes we do things like reading and baking, at least I do, and then to help with those emotions, and then there becomes that realization kind of moment where we kind of look to see everything that we've come through, that we've dealt with, whether it's been positive, whether it hasn't been so positive. And I'm trying to do that with this segment of the podcast, is to kind of look at, where I am in that emotional spectrum, and to kind of dive a little deeper into that emotional construct. So I'm out here in my garden. If you are watching this on the YouTube channel, you will be seeing my garden in all of its somewhat glory. And being out here this morning, tending to my garden, made me want to jumpstart this podcast, because it just triggered the emotional path that I've been on lately, and I'll explain why. So when we do a garden, so here I have 3 beds, semi-raised beds. They do have constructed sides to them, but they're natural earth in the ground, so they're kind of like a mixture of a raised bed and just regular garden bed. And I decided this year to do a little something different in my gardens, where usually I start seedlings in the greenhouse, which is right there, and plant them out into the garden and literally try every single vegetable I can get my hands on. I decided this year to just buy a few plants, buy a few vegetables, and try my hand at growing flowers instead. And I bought a ton of bulbs, a ton of seeds, a ton of things to start in the other section of my garden. And I have a wide range of things around the garden. I have a butterfly bush here. I have a lilac behind me. I have some other things growing here. I have a grapevine right here, and a couple of different things I'm experimenting with. And if you are a gardener, if you kind of know the way with plants can sometimes be very frustrating, especially with soil and just the ways that they are. And I have, over the years, tried my hardest to figure out my soil, figure out what needs to be in my soil, what there needs to be for things to grow, to work, to thrive. And one year I remember I had such success, and I had cucumbers and tomatoes and peppers coming out of my ears. I mean, it was like I didn't know what to do with all of them. And then one year it was literally nothing. I had maybe like 1 cucumber, a couple of okay tomatoes, nothing special. And I feel like sometimes, and this year I'll say I'm giving my vegetables their time. So they have, they're growing, they're taking their time. They've got some blooms on them, but my flowers, there's my flower bed. And if you're just listening, that was a picture of absolutely nothing. There's there's maybe like a few little sprouts coming up out of the ground, but not anywhere compared to what I had planted. And for some reason, the squirrels, they're not even bulbs. They were like tubers that I put into the ground for some of my flowers, and they just decided that they wanted to dig them up. And I keep having to replant them, and I don't think they're gonna work because they keep being dug up by the squirrels, and they realize that they don't like them, and then they just leave them there, and then, yeah. So while I was out here tending to the garden this morning and looking at all the, some growth and not some growth, it kind of struck me as something to relate to my emotional journey as of late. As of late, I feel like there has been some good things that are blooming, some good things that are happening, and then there's some things that are just not happening and not blooming and nothing's going on. And I feel like that is part of the emotional journey that we go through in just, or at least that I'm going through in aspects, because I can hope and wish that everything would bloom and be perfect, and everything would, I spent my time, I spent my money, I've pulled the weeds, I've tried my hardest to make this a good situation, to make, this garden what it should be and that it should grow. And sometimes there are failures. Sometimes there are things that don't work out, that don't do what we want them to do or be. And it is super frustrating. It is super frustrating to spend the time into something that, is good and not get results. And sometimes I feel that way about emotions. We spend our time trying to heal, trying to nourish ourselves, trying to do the things. That's a chicken. They're right there. Trying to aid in our, healing and recovery, and sometimes we see the light, and we see the good things that happen, and sometimes it just doesn't. It's not working. Something's not happening. Something's not doing, what we want it to be doing. And it can be very frustrating. It can be very frustrating to feel like, we're stuck in a cycle, or we're stuck in a rut. We're stuck and we can't, help anything, or whatever we're doing is just not, progressing our emotional well-being forward. And I'm trying to look at a garden and look at, what it can teach me. And I will take this grapevine, for example. So I bought 2 grapevines. The other one is right here in this little cage, and I bought them at the same time. This one, you can't even tell where it, like the top of it, you might be able to see if you're watching this, but if you're not watching this grapevine is literally maybe a foot tall. The one next to her is probably 3-4 feet, maybe even 5 feet tall, with a trellis, with leaves, there's even like little, if I go up closer, there's little buds and little things on it. And that one has grown exponentially. Now, what's the difference? They're both in the same soil. They were both the same grape that I bought at the same time. They both got equal help from me, gardening from me, trimming and doing the things that we're supposed to do. This one grew, this one didn't. And I feel that way sometimes about emotions. Like there's sometimes that we, nourish different feelings or different, things, and we feel like, well, it worked for this one. What I did for this worked, and I felt better, and I came on the other side of that emotion, whatever our emotion is, or whatever we're feeling, or whatever situation we're dealing with. I did this thing, and it didn't work. it worked the first time and now it's not working this time. And I think that's what we need to remember, is that we need to, it might not always work out the same as it did in times past of dealing with a situation or emotion. And we have to be willing to try something new, try something different. I decided to try, that one grape didn't work, so I tried. I have some other ones. I have a peach tree here, and I have a couple trees, and they're seeming to work. So they're coming along. So I tried something different. I changed the type of plant. I was like, well, if that grape is not going to work, let me try a different plant. And so maybe we have to try a different solution, try a different path forward than what worked before. Because just like our emotions change, we change as people. And I know that something that would have helped me back in my 20s or 30s is probably not going to help me in my 40s. And the way that I, have grown and changed over the years is just a different, I'm in a different mindset. I'm in a different, the age bracket, it's just different. And so I need to learn that. And this is for myself to learn that, what I might be experiencing now, whatever trial that I'm going through now might need a different solution than what I had tried previous. So in this state of blooming, I am looking to try new solutions and new paths forward in helping myself emotionally grow with the situations that I have. I don't have any, tell-all solution for things, because like I said, it changes. It changes with every season, every age, everything. And I think that is the purpose of this first podcast, is to kind of talk that out and to kind of say, what can we do to, help ourselves grow in these ever ebbing and flowing, roller coasters of emotion and change and life and patterns and things. And I think the best thing is to keep trying something until it works. And so like right now, like my flowers didn't work, and I'm still hopeful that there's a couple of things that have sprouted up and that have come and shown themselves. I see a little bit, but I might go to the store and buy a different set of maybe wildflower seeds that are made for sunny environments, because this is very sunny environment, and just spread a whole bunch in there and see what happens. Try something new, try something different, and just remember that change is hard. Change is not a bad thing though, but I know I'm definitely a product of like doing things a certain way all the time, and so change can be difficult, but I'm trying to keep an open mind to finding those new things to like help through situations. So I hope this podcast is going to help someone, this section of the podcast. So remember, we have an emotionally baked podcast where instead of diving deep, we dive into baking with our emotions. And oh my goodness, see that bird? That was a bald eagle. Y'all, I see bald eagles like all the time. If you're watching this on YouTube, you just got a treat. A bald eagle just flew right by. I don't even, wow, that was amazing. And I forgot what I was saying. That was so cool. Anyways, I'm just hoping for this podcast to, the other one, an emotionally booked, is another is another form of helping with emotions to talk about through things that, are enjoyable, that we do, that we read. And I'm hoping that this one, we can just dive a little bit deeper into what we're feeling. So if you're listening to this or if you're watching this, go ahead and like it, and in the comments, tell me something that you feel like you can pivot and change, and maybe something new that maybe others can be helped to try. Maybe it's like, if we're going through sadness or something, or maybe the solution, maybe we could take a walk, or go to the garden center if planting is your thing, and find a new plant and look at the instructions. And I always have to look for ones for sunny back here to make sure that I'm not getting something that needs shade, because that would probably be detrimental to that plant. So drop in the comments a suggestion for something that we can try that might be helpful to pivot in emotional situations. All right. Thank you for joining me on this first episode of the Emotionally Blooming podcast. I hope that you bloom where you're planted and know that you are loved. All right. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.